Michael, what would you tell that beginning screenwriter who's not yet had the opportunity to work with a director and banter back and forth about what that director sees appropriate for the film? What would you tell that beginning screenwriter in terms of creating characters and story when they've never actually been in the trenches?
Okay, well, I can talk to the writers, and when I coach writers, I can talk about my approach to story and the principles of story, but then it's Mark that could probably be more informed about talking about what the director's going to look for. So, for instance, when I first start working with a screenwriter on a new project, as I said, I start with a lot of questions to get a sense of how do they see the characters, what's their vision for the story, and so on. But, for example, one of the things that's key in creating the hero of the story is a couple things. One, we need to meet that character living their everyday life before the story gets underway. We've got to have a setup so we can see who is this character, who has this character been for some time before the train leaves the station, before the action gets big, before they're up against the obstacles and going after the big goal. So who is that? And in that portrait, what I also want to see is how is that character stuck? How is that character limited in their living? How is their fear or wound from the past or whatever it might be keeping them from being fulfilled or fully individuated? So how are they telling themselves their life is fine, but it's just sort of tolerable? Because then the writer's going to have to present them with a desire that's going to take them out of that stuck place and force them to confront their fears. So I can talk about that aspect of the character and how you can create that empathy with the character and introduce them that way, but I'd be interested in hearing what you'd say. So when, as a director, you get the script, are those the things you're looking for at the beginning of the screenplay too, or are there other elements, knowing you're going to have to direct actors in the role, that you're going to be eager to see in a well-written script?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're saying is great. But I mean, I'm just thinking, as I was listening to Mike, I was just thinking of when I read a screenplay, and a lot of the directors I've worked with have the same thing. We're dreading the first 10 pages. In other words, and hoping in the first 10 pages you will capture my imagination with exactly what you're talking about. Can you, within a few minutes, introduce me to a character who I get to know in his regular life, and then introduce to me a problem, whether it's the inciting incident, that I am so intrigued I have no idea what the hell's going to happen. In other words, can you, this is the big challenge, can you get me in 10 pages outside of my director's head? In other words, where I will stop directing. And by that I mean, because many times we as directors are reading scripts and going, how do I direct this? How do I direct this? How do I direct this? The good scripts, but that voice has stopped. Mm-hmm. I'm now with this character and his or her situation, and I realize I've been pulled out of that function, that mechanical function of directing, and I've been pulled into the story that all I want to do is keep reading. I need to keep reading. So I'm looking in the first 10 or so pages to be captured by an event and a situation that now I literally don't want to put the script down. And if that doesn't happen in 10, 20, or 25 pages, then I'm getting really discouraged. Then my director brain is going, well, if I was directing this, how would I save it? Mm-hmm. How would I fix it? And now I'm going into what you do so brilliantly. I'm going into script consulting, and do you know what I mean? I'm going into script fixing, and I don't want to go there. I don't want to be in that. So it's a lot of it is, I as the director, when I'm reading a script, and let's assume it's a film that eventually I do make, want to make, and I do make, I am at that moment in a very, very critical point in my process. I am the first audience. Okay, I'm reading it, and whatever reactions I'm having to this script now, and if it's going well, this is what I'm going to want to replicate months or a year later when it's up on the screen. In other words, the emotional journey I've been taken on. So this emotional journey that I'm on, if it's truly an emotional journey that I've engaged with the characters, involved in the characters, worried about the characters, cheering for the characters, hating the characters, whatever it is, I'm in a relationship with these characters, and I get to the end and I go, oh wow, that was a ride, and I realize I wasn't directing. Yeah. Then my job for the next year that it might take to make the film is to create a film that will do that, what just happened to me, to an audience of 100, 200, 300 people, but I'm going to do it with a film. If I don't have that experience, then I know it's a long road. I'm going to have to do a lot of work to try to create an emotional journey.
I'm curious because this happens to me a lot, or I find writers making what I think is this mistake often. And it's not that the script is too slow to get going, it's almost that it's too fast that it tries to get going. I think one of the difficulties a lot of newer writers, I think in particular, have or face is they hear that old maxim, you got to grab the reader in the first 10 pages. And so they think something big and exciting and, you know, filled with special effects or something has to happen right away, and that actually is detrimental to the story because it doesn't give us the chance to get to know the character, doesn't introduce them. Do you find that, I mean, do you have that same reaction? Do you find that sometimes it feels like the writer's sort of trying to jump the gun and get to the good stuff, so to speak, instead of really letting us be with a character and get inside that character before things kick into gear?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, the question is, when you say get to the good stuff, what is the good stuff? Yeah. Some of the good stuff is a lot of action and explosions and political intrigue and like that. And quite honestly, I look at that and say, that's fascinating. I have no idea what's going on. And more importantly, I don't care. Yeah. I don't care that this army is going that way, or this political explosion, or there's an assassination attempt against this president or something. I go, fine, you know, and I'm sure visually it'll be very interesting, but I don't care, which means I have nobody to care about. You know, and there are a lot of people there, but I don't care about. So when you say the good stuff, sometimes the good stuff is the most seemingly mundane, benign thing. I mean, American Beauty is a great example. The good stuff is a fantasy. There's a sexual fantasy that Lester Burnham has at a basketball game. And by that time, I know this character so well. And he has this little epiphany about something's ignited inside him. And I'm going, I'm intrigued. You know, so the question is, what is the good stuff? And I think a lot of people think, well, I have to do something big and splashy. You don't. You have to do something startling, I think. Something unexpected, but something that is logical and rational, but unexpected. But it can be small. Absolutely. It can be one. It can be a comment. I mean, in Ordinary People, actually, the inciting incident is over a serving of French toast. When the mother, to me, when she says, here's your favorite meal, he says, I don't want it. She takes it and she puts it in the garbage disposal and says, you can't save French toast. And the husband says, he'll eat it later. No, you can't save it. And right at that moment, I can feel the whole family cracking. And it's over French toast. So that, to me, is a big event. If you look at it on the screen, it doesn't look big. It feels big. And that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Because it's so illustrative of all the conflict that is going on and pushed down beneath the surface, especially in that movie, because the whole MO of that mother and that family is we can't let any conflict show. And that's it. I mean, one of the key principles I talk about all the time is your primary goal as a storyteller is you've got to elicit emotion, and emotion grows out of conflict. But at the beginning, when we meet the hero, a lot of times is what is the conflict from the past, or what's going on the inside with this character that has been pushed down so they can avoid any conflict. But we become aware of it because we see the banality or the sadness or the missing piece in that character's life. So the conflict is there, it's just not explosive yet.